This is Transistor.fm.
Hey, product people. We have a great show coming up. It's part 2 with Brennan Dunn, where he'll talk about tactics like building an email list and how to have paying customers lined up right when you launch. But first, we have a big announcement. Thanks to you, our listeners, this show has grown and grown and grown. Downloads have increased 65% over last month. Individual episodes are being downloaded thousands of times. And so Kyle and I got together last week to talk about sponsorship. We were really clear about one thing. We want to have sponsors that we believe in. We want to pick products that we actually use and love, and that we think you'll love too. So I went out and I asked one of my favorite products to sponsor the show. And they said yes. That product is Sprintly. You can go to their site at sprint.ly. Sprintly is what I use at my day job. It's what I use to manage our development process. And what I like about it is that it brings the agile methodology to the entire business. It makes the whole development process transparent. Everyone can see what's being worked on, what's in the backlog, and what's been completed. Managers don't have to ask how projects are going. They can see how they're going in real time. So if you're a fan of the show, I'd like you to do 2 things. First, thank @Sprintly on Twitter for sponsoring Product People. And second, go to www.sprint.ly and sign up for a free trial. Tell them that Product People sent you. Now, on to the show.
So what I'm kind of wondering is how crucial do you think it is for you to position your app as being different from everything else out there? Like how has that helped PlanScope?
Good question. So really what I haven't done intentionally is I haven't started saying that I'm a sexier project management tool or whatever. I don't care that it's a project management tool. Most of my users don't care. They want that outcome. And so I really try to market it as a tool that produces that outcome. Mm-hmm. And so doing that allowed me to kind of build it with this blank slate of, okay, I don't care what other PM software has as features because I know what problems my customers have, and I know how to inverse these problems and realize what features end up needing to be built in order to realize that. So instead of saying, every PM app out there has collaboration tools and this and that and whatever else, I started with this kind of blank slate of, let's just focus on what problems people have, and if I want problem X to go away, what needs to be built to kind of bridge that. And so that's really what I did, and the sales copy and everything else kind of just flowed from. Like if you go to the features page, it's more of almost like a story, I think, and it's done intentionally that way, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to portray this. If this resonates with you, if this is the problem you have today, this software will make tomorrow look like this for you. So instead of just listing out a bunch of technical features, which as an engineer, it's hard to do that because I want to list out features. I want to talk about how the fact that I made it so people can reply to comment notifications emails from their inbox and it'll get filed into PlanScope will intercept that email and everything. That's cool to me, and I want to write about that. I want to promote that I've done that. But it's something that it's not a direct part of that story, so I've intentionally kind of not included that.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a narrow focus on like one part, probably one of the most challenging parts of consulting, which is keeping a client informed about budget and scope. And it's kind of, you're not really, saying anything about file sharing or things like that, typically where, the project management apps just get into a whose feature list is longer type thing. You're just focusing on this one problem that any freelancer who reads, your lead-in sentence here about PlanScope helps you and your clients stay on top of the budget and scope of your project, like that'll immediately resonate with anyone who's ever done freelance work. So it's kind of interesting that you've, focused on this one thing and really, like you said, told a story around it rather than explain what the software does specifically. Like you don't really say how you do it. You just kind of say what the end goal is. And to me, that's kind of what makes PlanScope really stand out from a lot of other PM sort of solutions.
Right. Yeah. Again, I'm not. That's kind of the goal. I mean, people ask me like, "Can I use this at my startup?" And my response is typically, theoretically, yes, but you probably shouldn't. Here are some tools you should use probably instead. And I intentionally don't want to just load it with so much stuff that it works on every possible in every possible situation, because then it won't have a story anymore. Then it won't be so singularly focused on doing one thing really well that it'll actually end up hurting the people that I originally built it to help.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So if you decided to go after this market, you said, okay, I'm gonna you did your research and you were in some forums, it sounds like, and you saw that there's some reoccurring pain, and then you decided to build it. How did you get people to care? How did you get people to notice it? How did you build, you started with 0 customers. How did you get people to even know that this existed and then get them to use it?
So my entire marketing strategy, really even to this day, is marketing through education. So I knew the audience that I wanted to attract, and I knew what problems they had. So I just started really blogging about my thoughts on those problems and everything, and I would get my blog posts in front of the audience I was intending to get. So if case in point, let's say I'm reading a forum and people are again complaining about transparency with their clients or something, I would then just say, hey, I would include myself. I wouldn't just throw in a link. I would say, great question. This is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and I'd go on for a paragraph or two, and then I'd say, I happened to write about this on my blog recently, and I'd link back to my blog. And this doesn't scale well, but it's good initially. And then all of my blog posts would always have a call to action. I would make sure that I made it so if people, I knew they were coming because they're wanting to read a post on being more transparent with their clients. So my call to action would just be something like, would you like to be more transparent with your clients? If so, you might be interested in this project I'm working on. Click here to be the first to be notified when it's available. And so that was kind of my initial strategy, and that's what kind of basically snowballed PlanScope into existence.
Mm-hmm. And so you were writing these posts and engaging with the community while you were building the actual product.
Yeah, because people don't buy software to buy software. People buy software to make their lives better somehow. So a blog post is equally able, sometimes even more able, to do that than a piece of software. So all I really had to do is jump on the thread of how do I help people make their lives as consultants better, and I would just knock out blog posts and content marketing or content around that, jump into people's conversations, talk with them about it, engage with them, and really build up this kind of audience of people who wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah, and can you give me a sense, you publish your first post, so you've started building this product, you publish your first post on planscope.io. What kind of traffic did you get on that first post?
I mean, it was maybe, back then I was blogging on Tumblr, so I don't even think a lot of those articles even made it. But I probably got, I don't know, a few thousand total over the months I was developing PlanScope, and like I mentioned, I had 300 plus people on that list by the time PlanScope was ready. So yeah, I mean, I would just kind of balance, and what was really helpful about it was when I could remove myself from the editor and write about the problems that I was tackling with PlanScope. It kind of let me level myself again. I got out of the weeds, I got out of the code, and I could kind of center myself again on, okay, why am I doing this? What's the desired outcome? And it was almost like a meditation of sort, but it helped me build up that initial customer base.
Yeah. And so how long did it take you to build that list of 300?
So I started PlanScope, I want to say October, November of last year. Not 2012, but 2011. And I had launched it at LessConf in February, so about 4 months.
Okay.
And was that primarily through your blogging? Like, how did you manage to build a list of the 300 people?
Blogging, I had at that time I had like 300 Twitter followers, so it wasn't really.
Got every one of them to sign up.
Yeah, I really have a huge audience there, but I mean the thing is, I didn't ask people to join this list and let it go silent for 4 months. I kept up a dialogue, and I encouraged people to, if they knew people who also share this problem, because freelancers know freelancers, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have specific tracking data on that, but I know that a lot of the growth was probably due to, people spreading the word around their circles.
And were you working full time? So that 4 months, were you working full time on building PlanScope, or were you juggling consulting at the same time?
Well, at that point, I was still running my consultancy, so the benefit of that was I didn't really need to worry about making money because I had other people working for me, and but I still had to run the company, so I was still always distracted, but I was more or less full time for 4 months, working weekends and neglecting the family and everything else.
So that was a hard 4 months.
It was grueling, but my goal was I really wanted to I wanted to get these payment notifications from Stripe. I mean, I really wanted to sell this. I really wanted to get it out there and get people doing more than just joining my announcement list. Mm-hmm. I wanted to verify it the best way possible. And so when I launched, it wasn't as full-featured as anywhere near as full-featured as it is today, but it had just enough to solve a few core problems that this audience shared, and that's all it needed. And that was it.
And so how long after you launched was it until you saw that first Stripe payment?
Everyone had a month trial, but I mean, literally 30 days or a month after announcing it, payments were coming in.
Yeah, so you pretty much had people ready to use it because you had built up this list and
Yep.
kind of built up excitement about the product. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
Definitely beats launching in the dark and hoping that people somehow stumble upon it.
It does. Again, I don't like that amount of risk. I don't want to be in the game where I'm crossing my fingers hoping that someone somewhere finds this valuable enough to go out and get out their credit card and pay for it.
And what was that initial launch like? So you said you had how many people signed up when you launched, and then how many of those converted to paying once the 30-day trial was over?
I don't remember I know I had 24, I want to say, paying customers, so about 10% maybe. Although it's funny, like I still, like, just last week, somebody back then, I mean, it was 50% off permanently from a baseline price of $12. So I got like a new customer last week who was $6, and I was like, what? And then I realized it was, it's still kind of the gaps trickled in, but immediately, I want to say probably about 100 people from that list ended up getting a trial, and about a quarter then ended up going paid.
Wow. So you had about 24 paying customers shortly after launch.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, I mean, you could say, yeah, I mean, yeah.
I just think
they weren't paying customers yet, but a month later after their trial expired, they were.
Yeah. I just think it's neat to actually, see what are the real numbers. What should people's expectations be? In your case, that's interesting. The 4 months to build, build up a list of 300, 100 sign up for a trial, and about 20, 25 of those folks actually start paying you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So this kind of like leads me to another question that I always have for other folks who run SaaS apps, which is like, now that you've been doing this for about a year, I guess, what sorts of like metrics do you track, and how do you do your analytics? Do you use a pre-built software for that, or do you kind of roll your own analytics, or sort of do ad hoc reporting? Because I know that, like, when I talk to, like, I have a SaaS product I run on the side, and then other folks I talk to as well, it's people track different things like churn and retention, and they measure it in different ways. So I'd be curious to know, like, what are your sort of key metrics that you keep track of, and technically, how do you do it?
Sure. So I use off-the-shelf stuff as much as possible. So I'm using Intercom to just kind of see who signs up, how often they log in, things like that. That just gives me general. I send over data points that I care about, and I can segment people and send them messages. Like when we rolled out international currency support, I just segmented everyone who was not in the U.S. and send them an email that way. So that was really helpful.
Okay.
For revenue tracking and general event stuff, I'm using Kissmetrics. I love Kissmetrics revenue graph. They show you churn, how that churn affects, or what that churn, or given the income coming in and your churn, what's the lifetime value of a given cost of your average customer?
That's does it plug into Stripe directly, or do you have to?
No, so on the hook on the app side that sends off the email receipt whenever a charge happens. When I send out that email, I just register the amount and who was charged with Kiss, and
okay,
it does that all. Well, what's cool about it is I can actually, because Kissmetrics tracks where they came from and everything initially, I can see, like, we integrate with Harvest, and Harvest put us on their add-ons page, so I can see how much money has been made from people that came from that add-ons page.
Right. Okay.
It's pretty easy to do that. So Kissmetrics is great. I've just started using Dig My Data, which is just kind of like a projections app.
Yeah, I was using them for a while. The projections are really handy.
Yeah, it is. And I've also started doing, the only bit of custom reporting code I've written is something that will just tap into Stripe and find all the upcoming charges for the next 30 days. So I can kind of see, and I also apply my given trial conversion rate to that. So I can kind of see, what's February going to look like, given what I have now, given the trials that we've had sign up. So that's really the only thing I've written custom, and that's a very, like, something I spent maybe 15 minutes on. Very, very bad code, but it works, and only I see it. So.
Yeah.
And how much business have you had from integrations like Harvest?
So I've integrated with quite a few different invoicing tools. Harvest is the only one that I have on, who has me on their add-ons page. But I've had a lot of people Googling around for, like, FreshBooks project management, and I show up. I'm now working on doing, now that we're getting, when you're nobody and you have like 30 customers or something, it's hard to go to someone like a multi-million-dollar company like Harvest and asking, hey, can you do a cross promo for us?
Yeah.
But once you're more, once you start getting more exposure and everything, I've had a few. I won't name who, but it's funny. Two of the people that we integrate with, both independently within the last month, reached out to me saying that they want to find a way to mutually benefit both of our audiences, which happen to be mutual customers of both of ours. So that could mean me promoting them to my lists and them promoting us to their bigger lists.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's a point probably with that that sort of cross promotion where you reach kind of like a critical inertia where getting those first few people on board is probably a little bit difficult, but once you've got a couple, then their competitors see them on your site and they kind of feel like maybe they're missing out. So I imagine like once you've got a couple, the rest kind of gradually trickle in as well, like you said, reaching out to you.
Yeah, definitely. So honestly, the majority of our growth hasn't been through integrations. It's just been, that helps, but it's really a value add once people, because most of our customers have used one of the products we integrate with anyway. So,
right.
Yeah. Part of the onboarding is figuring that out.
So most of your customers are still coming to you just from what you've been doing, writing blog posts, having an email sign-up form. Is there anything else kind of significant on the marketing side?
So I actually kind of discovered when I wrote my book. It was kind of strange. So I wrote the book because at the time PlanScope was maybe doing $1,000 a month or something, and it wasn't it wasn't paying all of my bills anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted more transactional revenue that could kind of sustain me, could keep me in the product business, self-sufficient. And so I did this book, and the book was complementary in the sense that it's targeting the same exact audience as PlanScope.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I discovered after that was, wow, a lot of people who read my book are ending up signing up for PlanScope. And what I quickly discovered is, books or info products that are like my book are largely impulse buys. Getting people to switch and ditch whatever PM software they have now is pretty tough.
Mm-hmm.
So the book was more of a kind of almost like a gateway drug into me and my philosophy towards consulting. And then a lot of people who would read the book, I would not promote it outright, but I would mention I built PlanScope for much the same reasons that I'm telling you to do this. And I ended up getting a lot of people subscribing to PlanScope who read my book. So I started thinking wow, this is interesting.
Yeah.
So I took that even further, and I built up a weekly newsletter from my people who bought my book. And I'm just sending out free kind of educational, no strings attached content each week, when now we're at, I think, 3,500 people who I show up in their inbox each Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them, there's almost like this progression of they join my newsletter. A few weeks later, they might buy my book. And then after that, they might subscribe to PlanScope. And then I quickly realized, and this is largely after reading Permission Marketing by Seth Godin, I was like, wow, this is a low barrier of entry way of getting potential new customers for PlanScope in my book and everything else. So I've actually just started within the last few weeks driving paid traffic to get people on my newsletter.
Yeah.
Get them into my little world, and over time deliver value to them consistently week by week, which then gets them to realize, okay, this guy aligns well with the problems I face, and there's something that I like about what he's saying. I might like his project management tool because of that same reason.
Yeah.
So that's really been helping more than I ever thought. So I'm getting a lot of people who go through that avenue. I'm also getting about a quarter of signups coming organically, so people Googling around for whatever and finding me and signing up that way. So really, I've just started dabbling in I guess paid acquisition, but I wouldn't. I think it's almost suicide to say I'm going to run a PPC ad and send them to buy my book or buy Planscope or something, because for all they know, like, who am I? Why is my book any good? Why is my software any good? But getting them into a mailing list or newsletter, which over time I can really qualify people by, if they like what I'm going to say, they're going to keep getting what I'm saying. Otherwise, they're going to unsubscribe. And that's kind of been my new goal, or my new tactic, I think.
Yeah. And do you think you could have written a book first before building Planscope?
If I could start over, I would have.
Interesting.
I had no audience, really. I mean, I had my 300 announcement people, but I didn't have an audience of people who looked at me as an authority on consulting. Now I have that audience who looks at me as influential or as an authority in freelancing and consulting, which makes it so when I have a new product or promote one of my products, that promotion falls on receptive ears.
Yeah, because in some ways a book could be like an MVP. Does this content solve a useful problem for people? And then, you could do what, sorry, now I'm losing his name, Bootstrapping Design. Jared? Is that his?
Oh, yeah, Jared, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so Jared started with a book, but now he's building an app called Cascade. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I guess in some ways that was his path. He wrote a book that was kind of MVP for now the product that he's going to build.
I mean, people like Nathan Barrier doing that. A lot of people. I mean, again, when you finally realize that people don't buy software, they buy outcomes. You realize that software is a medium, books are a medium, video courses are a medium. I mean, these are all just different mediums of achieving a goal or achieving some outcome. So, the book is an easier and way of getting to a degree of achievement for the outcome I was hoping for.
Yeah.
And it would have been a far easier first step, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you keep bringing back this idea of people don't buy your product, they buy outcomes. It sounds like that was, something that you were pretty disciplined in reminding yourself throughout this whole process.
Definitely. I mean, again, when you get into the quicksand of being obsessed with features and code and everything else, it becomes very easy to write code for its own sake and start to deviate from the path that you should be on, which is making tomorrow a little brighter for your customer.
And it sounds like, how you said you had your email list and you were reaching out to customers and starting discussions with them, and you had those blog posts, like basically you would come up for air and kind of meditate back on sort of the big picture thing. It sounds like those are some of the ways that you kind of did that without, like, to keep yourself from just getting lost in the code kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah, that's definitely right.
Well, I'd like to start winding down here, but I think next I'd like to know, how much money have you made so far? Are you comfortable sharing a few revenue numbers?
It's all on my blog, so yeah. Sure.
Well, let's start with Planscope. What's been the revenue so far?
I just hit $6,000 a month. So I don't know what the total. If you go to you can see what the total is up to a month and a half ago.
That's right.
My blog, I did like an annual report, end of year thing where I crunched the numbers. But yeah, Planscope's doing well. My workshop, so one of the things that I learned, the workshop just kind of evolved from me talking with my customers who have bought my book, and a small percentage of them were saying, hey, I want to grow. I want to go beyond myself. I know you did the consultancy thing. I have some questions. Can you answer them for me? And I would answer them, and I kept doing this over and over and over. And I kind of realized, wow, there's a lot of people who have this need to want to know how to build up a consulting company. So instead of me going to internet forums and finding this independently, I was getting this firsthand from people who have historically already paid me something. So I kind of had a one-up in that regard, and I put together a workshop, a 2-day kind of intensive workshop, and the price point on that is $1,200 for a seat. So it's significantly higher than the book. And what that's done is it's kind of made it so, I could have just sold a book and made $49 off now 2,000 something people who have bought my book. Mm-hmm. But a percentage of them have increased their customer LTV or lifetime value by going and getting a PlanScope account or registering for my workshop. So now I have a lot of customers in the 4-figure LTV who could have just been a $50 customer. But I'm providing additional value to people who want that additional value, who want to grow more. And so I've done the workshop, which, if I sell that out, that's the total revenue is $30,000. I've actually, Obi Fernandez of HashRocket is co-teaching it with me. So I'm not keeping all of that. But so there's that, and then the book sells consistently, a few thousand a month. It's kind of tapered off, but it's never been, I want to say, below 2,000 for a month. My upcoming book, which I've started pre-sales with, gets released middle of next month, and that's already done, I think 7,000 pre-sales.
Wow.
So yeah, it's validation, and the pre-sales came from people who already know I know how to ship, right? I've already launched a book. I've put together a workshop that people rave about. I've built PlanScope, and keep it maintained. So the risk of, if I pay this, am I going to get anything in return, is minimal. So I'm offering a pretty good discount, and that's been great validation for that. So overall, I've been doing in the neighborhood of I want to say probably 20 to 30,000 a month combined, and so it's definitely been nice.
Yeah, you're starting to really sell me on this idea of focusing on one kind of community of people and then getting to know their needs, and then because I can see you're just tracking with this one group, and I can see how one phase kind of goes into the next. And I think for me, my problem is I'm a bit of a spaz, and I'm a member of a lot of different communities and a lot of different places, and it seems like there was a lot of benefit for you to kind of choose this one group of people, really get to know them, and I can see like each time you're just helping them out. So when you're just in the forums, you're just helping them out best you can, and then you keep going, and this group of people just that you've helped just keeps growing.
Right. I mean, the goal is, I don't consider myself a total authority on all things consulting, but I know for a fact that for a percentage of people, I'm at least a little bit ahead of them when it comes to consulting. And there's a lot of freelancers and consultants out there. So, all I'm really doing, I'm sorry, I think that's my kid.
That's okay.
all I'm really doing is just providing value in the sense of you don't need to go, like, the whole pitch for my workshop, for instance, is I've lost more than $100,000 in screw-ups when running my company. Here's what you can avoid and how to avoid it, and this is just, I know what you want tomorrow to be because I've been there. I know what it would mean if you can work less, charge more, what that means for your family life and what that means for your health and everything else. And I always position things in that way. And also, another thing that works really well is, stand behind everything. I publicly say, if you don't like it, I'm not going to charge you for it, and that's helped a lot too. So, yeah, find something you're good at, that you're an authority at, and realize you don't need to be, like, one of the biggest misconceptions I think is people say, well, I can't teach anyone because I'm not some pro Ruby developer, right? I'm not some like well-known, asked to speak at every conference developer. But the fact is, it's usually easier to learn from somebody who's more recently been where you are now, or been where you were.
Mm-hmm.
And learning from them and saving them time, because I'm targeting people who put a premium on their time. Can you probably Google for a few days or a week and find a lot of the info I talk about in my book? Sure. But if you value your time, and some people will never value their time, but I'm targeting people that do. And I'm doing the research for them. I'm doing the interviews. I'm doing all that work, which is benefiting a lot of people.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, talking about like not having to be an absolute expert before diving into creating some kind of info product. There's thelaunchcoach.com is a good resource that kind of like walks you through the steps to creating an info product. And one of the main points that he talks about at first is exactly that you shouldn't see that as a barrier just because you don't know everything about a certain subject. He says, you can rate expertise on a scale of 1 to 10, and even if you're only a 6 on a subject, well, you can still provide a lot of value to everybody's that's still at 1 to 5.
Yep.
And if you were to kind of graph out the number of people in each one of those kind of buckets, there's probably more people in the 1 to 5 group anyway than the 6 to 10. So even if you're, not the best of the best in that particular area, there's still a lot of people out there that you can help, even with just above amateur knowledge kind of.
Or conversely, you can do the research for them. I mean, you can do the interviews, research all the, spend a lot of time so they don't need to spend the time, and tell them, I'm saving you time by doing the research for you. And you can, on one hand, you can spend 40 hours researching this topic, or you can pay me $40 and I've done that for you. So.
Exactly. And I'm sure that, and you've probably found this as well too, that as you build products and talk with your customers, you kind of learn more about the topic yourself because you're more immersed in it anyway. So even if you're only a 5 when you dive in, by talking with your customers and figuring out what problems they have and how you can solve them, you kind of grow your own inherent knowledge of the subject as well.
I mean, with my mailing list, for instance, I have an autoresponder for a few days out that asks people point blank, what one problem is keeping your business from growing? Reply to this email and let me know. And I'm getting about 30 to 40 signups a day on that, and maybe 5 or 6 people respond to that each day. And that is just, that's gold. That's just data I can use, research, and see, is there a critical mass on any particular topic, and use that to better the products I have, or even come up with new products.
Yeah, man, that's really good stuff. Brennan, you've been really generous with your time. I want to be able to let you go, but maybe to end, what is the title of your new book? What's the new book you're working on?
So the new book is, again, stuff that organically emerged from conversations with my customers. But the new book is all about, there's a lot of data out there and a lot of stuff on how to, if you have a product site, right, like how to optimize that for conversions and get customers to your product. And this is basically taking a lot of the same principles but applying it directly to a consulting sales website. So instead of the typical, freelancer site about, I will bring your idea to life and a bunch of vague abstractions, and here I am, I like snowboarding and blah, blah, blah. To the average client, that's not speaking to their needs. That's not, if they're looking to get more customers in their business, you're probably not resonating with them. So the goal of the book is to what I've done is I've talked to a lot of people. I've interviewed a lot of different really influential people in this space, and used things that have worked for me. And I basically just go at it and say, start to finish, Here's how you put a lot of your business development and customer acquisition and get your website to do most of that legwork for you. So a lot of it is, what I call carrots. How do you get free ebooks or white papers or whatever into the hands of a prospective client? Get them to kind of what people are doing now with me. They get on my newsletter, and any trust barriers they might put up slowly get eroded as they realize, I know what I'm talking about and I can provide value to them, and if I don't, they're going to jump ship. And it's doing that same thing, but with consulting clients and getting people in the door and building up an audience, a passionate audience of people who, even if they're not your direct client, will refer people to you. And I mean, that's how, when I grew my business, I mean, we had to spend, my payroll alone was $100,000 a month. I couldn't just wait for referrals. I couldn't wait for people to come to me. I needed to make more than that each month to pay my bills.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just applying a lot of the lessons I learned doing that, and getting it in the hands of because let's face it, a lot of freelancers they're more technicians than they are business owners. And I want to fix that. I want to make more of these people who quit their job as a developer and go out freelance developing. I want to get them armed with everything they need to know that I learned the hard way on how to build a proper, sustainable business around themselves. So that's kind of what the next book's about.
Yeah. And just from my own experience, I think, Brennan, I'm on your list right now just because I was curious. And I think you send one of the best newsletters of that kind. It always seems like it's actually from a person. And also the way that you've styled it, I think really works for me for some reason. Some people overstyle their email newsletters and make it look too brandy, too much images and logos. But I think other people understyle it and maybe make it look like plain text, 12 pixel font size or whatever. And yours is really quite readable, but seems personal at the same time.
Thanks. Yeah.
So why don't we end right there? Brennan, where can people find you on the web, and how can they sign up for this email list we've been talking about?
So the email list is at freelancersweekly.com. So freelancers, that's plural, weekly.com. Actually, if you sign up there, the thank you page has a link to just about everything I've done. So just to quickly recap, I have Planscope, which is at planscope.io.
Mm-hmm.
I have my first book, which is at doubleyourfreelancingrate.com. My second book doesn't have a formal domain yet, but it's doubleyourfreelancingrate.com/the-blueprint. And I also have a weekly podcast that me and Eric Davis host called The Business of Freelancing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
I'm going to have to check that out.
A bit. Yeah, it's pretty much just nothing technical. It's just focused on the business side of freelancing. So we don't talk about design or development or any of that stuff. So I've got that. And lastly, I have the masterclass or the workshop. That's at buildaconsultancy.com. But again, if you sign up for my newsletter, you can unsubscribe immediately, but it's all on the thank you page. There's links to it all.
Well, Brennan, thanks so much for being on the show. There is a lot of stuff here that even for me, I've been thinking about. So thanks for coming on, and we'd love to have you back sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you, Justin and Kyle.
And thank you for being our listener. We really appreciate everyone that tunes in week after week, and all those people that have been sending us encouragement on Twitter. That's at ProductPeopleTV. Please go to www.sprint.ly and sign up for a free trial, and thank @Sprintly on Twitter. Don't want to miss a show? Make sure you subscribe. You can subscribe in iTunes or by going to our website, productpeople.tv. See you next time. Podcast hosting is provided by Transistor.fm. They host our MP3 files, generate our RSS feed, provide us with analytics, and help us distribute the show to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you want to start your own podcast or you want to switch to Transistor, go to transistor.fm/Justin and get 15% off your first year.